Welcome. Tonight, we're going to have Sid moderate. Have you gone through the rules?
Not yet.
Okay, so I'm going to let him go through the rules. Again, well, let's have a lively debate, and good luck to all you candidates. Sid?
Thank you. Rex. We've done this quite a few cycles, biannual cycles. That's, I guess, I would call it. Biannual. I was thinking back, the ones with Joe Pulaski, going way, way back, trying to remember all the people that Joe ran against. And I don't think I did the Lincoln Douglas. I can't remember that one, but a lot of them. As far as our format, this is a great event, and one of the things that I think that's always made it a great event is always been a very civil event. Right? People, you are obviously here because you care, but people have always, as I said, have been, civility has always been emphasized. Now I'm going to ask you, and I know there are a lot of people here who really feel very strongly about some of these folks who are going to be up here, we divided this up into 3 phases. And after each phase, like we're going to have the candidates for highway supervisor, and candidates for assessor first. And they're just going to make statements about whatever they want to make for 2 minutes. And they're not going to take any questions. Then the council people will be up here, and they will be taking questions, many, many questions. And that after each phase, that's the time to applaud, okay? And they will richly deserve it. And the last phase is going to be the candidates for supervisor. So I think I should want to point out, I dislike these 2 gentlemen in the front, these 2 suspicious-looking guys right here. These are our timekeepers, and they'll be informing the candidates, how much time that they have. And it's like those old movies when you see the calendar, flashing by, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to start out, first we're going to start out with the candidates for assessors. And we'll start out with the Democratic, and they will also, Mr. Fisher, Greg Fisher, will have Greg, is just the Democratic line? Also independent. Independent.
Hi, I'm Greg Fisher. I'm glad to be here. I like that so many people from the Calverton area are here. I was a trustee at one time of the Calverton Civic Association. Rex recently asked me to be a trustee again, and I said no. I said, Rex, one of the problems is that the Civic isn't listened to enough, and one of the reasons why I'm seeking elected office is to get us the representation we really need and the access to government we really need. I've been in this area about 10 years. I have 2 children in this school, Clark and Anna, and I have 2 older kids in their 20s, so not on their own. But we live about 9/10 of a mile in that direction, and I'm very concerned about what's happening in our area. I'm concerned about this office, about the assessor's office. About 3/4 of a mile that way, there's a farm, about 80 acres. Used to pay $2,000 a year in taxes, sold its development rights. Got reassessed to pay $40,000 a year in taxes. Unless I appraise a piece of property. That goes beyond explanation. I'm concerned about what happened up in Northville at the Riverhead terminal market, and that was grossly under-assessed. I'm concerned that residential taxpayers are paying and subsidizing corporations in a backhanded kind of way through bad assessments. So, I have a 10-point plan for fixing the assessor's office, providing checks and balances. I won't have the time to go through it in 30 seconds. It'll be in the papers. It'll list what we have to do: transparency, accountability, checks and balances. We need all that because there is something insidious going on in the background. It's really obvious when you look at the numbers. And I have copies of those tax bills with me, actually. Anybody can look at it. $2,000 one year, sell development rights, go up to $40,000. I can't explain it. So maybe Mrs. Pettenberg can. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the Calverton and Wading River Civic Association for hosting this event tonight. What does an assessor do? An assessor values property using the 3 approaches to value. We don't raise revenues, we don't collect taxes, we don't levy taxes, we don't even collect the 25 cents if you come in for a FOIA. We don't take any money. I can't speak to the form that my opponent has alluded to. If he would share that information, I could research that back in the office. Anybody can call me when they get back, and I'll have an answer. As far as the Northville industry or Tosco, being grossly underassessed is a fallacy, because right now we're in litigation because it recently sold for $26 million and we have it a little over $26 million. So we're in negotiations with the buyer. So to say that it was grossly underassessed is a fallacy. The assessor's office grants exemptions where they're allowed by law. We don't favor anybody to induce anybody to come. That's not our job. That would be the IDA. We don't overassess people just to bang them to get the tax dollars out of it. We have to assess at a uniform percent of value. The state measures that uniform percent of value every year. They give us what's called an equalization rate. I'm very proud to say this year that I actually found $160,000 in community preservation fund money that was not collected and was not reported at the county clerk's office. And the town benefited by having that money in its coffers to further expand open space in our purchases. I also created an efficient method of logging in grievances where the staff only keys in a tax map number, they punch a button, the information is populated without any data entry errors, and it creates efficiencies and time savings for the office and for the taxpayers. Later on, I have some star information I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry I didn't see that, but I have star information for people you have to register for basic star things.
All right, now we'll go to the candidates for supervisor. Thank you. Now we'll go to the candidates for supervisor. Michael Panchak, who is the conservative. Highway.
Can everybody hear me? Do I need a microphone?
Yes.
I would like to thank the Wading River Civic and the Calverton Civic Association for putting this event together. I'd like to thank everybody for coming down tonight to get a little insight before election night. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Mike Panchak. I am running for Riverhead Town Highway Superintendent. I've been a lifelong resident of Riverhead, went to school here myself, and also my son. My oldest son just graduated here, moved on to 5th grade for last year. I currently, for the past 20 years, along with my mother and father, I've been running a concrete, asphalt, and site work company under the name of KJB Industries and Eagle Asphalt. We are primarily a municipal contractor, also doing commercial and private work. We have held many contracts with many municipalities in the past, including the town of Riverhead, town of Southampton, town of Brookhaven, town of Islip, town of East Hampton, Suffolk County Department of Public Works, and New York State, just to name a few. We've been an independent snowplow contractor for the Suffolk County Department of Public Works since 1996. Coming from the private industry, I have the background, knowledge, and experience to perform the task correctly and, most importantly, cost effectively. I understand the time that it is and the effort it is to run a business. I can budget jobs, estimate projects for dollar amounts, and perform both effectively. I understand government contracts and the legality that go along with them, and the guarantees that are given. At the last event we went to, I was asked what I would do differently if elected. One of the main things with winter coming up, I'd like to privatize the snowplow contracting. I think we don't have, currently the department doesn't have enough guys to cover the mileage of highways that we have. The independent contractors are there when it's snowing, and when it's not snowing, they're not there. You don't have to maintain their equipment, they maintain their own equipment, they register their own equipment. That's it.
And now we'll have Gio Woodson.
Thank you, good evening. I'd like to thank the Civic Association for holding this event. For those that don't know me, I'm George Woodson. I'm the current highway superintendent. In 2008, the taxpayers of Riverhead elected me highway superintendent and I would like to thank them for giving me the privilege of holding this position. In the years since I've taken office, I and my employees have worked hard to bring our department to a higher standard than previous administrations. 2010, the residents of Riverhead expressed enough confidence in me to vote, increase my term up to 4 years. 2011, I was picked by the Riverhead News Review, who honored me as Public Servant of the Year. During this election, I will let my accomplishments speak for themselves. I have them up here if you want a copy. I, however, did not accomplish this on my own. I give all the credit to my highway employees who have worked hard, especially during the flooding rains of 2010 and Hurricane Sandy of 2012. More recently, the highway department received great reviews for a job well done with the 30 guys we got. During the blizzard of February 2013, we were consistently picked as one of the top 3 towns on Long Island that effectively kept all the roads open and as safe as possible for the residents of the town. Just a note, went by the Sheriff's Department. Okay, I'll leave that for later. Last year, I successfully fought to regain over $800,000 in administration costs charged to the highway department. It's a lot of roads and sidewalks we were missing out on. We have also saved the residents over $3 million in buying good use surplus equipment and maintain and upgrade our fleet. I am very proud of all that we have accomplished in a short period of time. I would like to ask you to please re-elect me as your highway superintendent so I can continue the work I've started. Thank you.
Now, I'll be calling up the candidates for town council. So can we please come up here? Democrats can sit to my right, ideologically to my right, but and the Republican candidate can sit to my left, please. What I'm going to do, each of the candidates for town council will be making an opening statement, but a lot of you are probably counting seats up there, counting 1, 2, 3, and I think there's a 4th one, yes. Councilman John Dunleavy. I have a letter from the councilman, and it's a brief letter, but it says, it's my deepest personal regrets that I will not be able to attend and participate in the candidates debate graciously sponsored and conducted by your divine citizens. I must beg your forgiveness that I cannot be there, as my wife Marie and I will be on a pre-arranged cruise scheduled over 6 months ago. We will be celebrating not only my wife's birthday, but our wedding anniversary as well. If possible, I welcome the opportunity anytime before election day to meet with your organization, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's the letter from Mr. Dunlop, Councilman Dunlop. Each candidate is going to make a 2-minute opening statement, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the Republican candidate and then go to the Democratic candidate. When we close, I'll reverse this. Okay? And when the questions come in, I'll try to alternate the flow of that. All right? And I'd like to start with Councilwoman Jody Giglio.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jody Giglio, and I have been honored to serve as your councilwoman for the last 4 years. I serve with a spirited town board that comes from various backgrounds and who bring ideas and visions to the table. Unlike the federal government, we communicate, we debate, we negotiate, and we compromise for the best outcome to you, the taxpayers of Riverhead. As your councilwoman, I have stayed true to my promise and have worked hard to improve quality of life issues while saving taxpayers money and bringing much needed jobs to EPCAL. When it came time to extend our contract for sanitation, I, as the liaison to sanitation, insisted that we put the contract out to bid. By redrafting the code and renegotiating our sanitation contract, we save taxpayers $2 million townwide and every household $200. By my requesting a phone audit, we realized that we had been paying phone lines that we had not used for years. This resulted in a refund, a check from Verizon for $75,000, and those savings will exist going forward. I led the charge for the FAA to build the integrated next-gen facility at EPCAL, which would not only provide construction jobs, but would provide long-term, high-paying jobs with secondary jobs and industry building around it. This board, as a team, has worked to revitalize downtown and to subdivide EPCAL. We have brought back excitement to a once-abandoned downtown. When we took office, the vacancy rate downtown was 70%, and now, a mere 4 years later, we are approximately at 20%. The pendulum has swung the other way, folks. Our approach to EPCAL, one I campaigned on for years ago, to subdivide and make smaller lots is near completion. This will bring the much-needed jobs this town has been missing since Grumman left, and is the only chance for tax relief. There is a light that can be seen at the end of the tunnel, and we must stay on track in subdividing the land.
Now, Billy Thomas.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the civics and the residents who showed up tonight and to allow us to be heard. I'm a resident of Bating Hollow for 11 years. I live right down the road, right here on Riley Avenue. I live next to a farm, and I like it that way. I have been a realtor for 21 years, and I've serviced this community as a realtor that whole time. Wading River is where my office is, that holds my real estate office. I bought that in 2008. I started my company in 2001. I also have some banking experience. I worked for Chase for 10 years. I'm married to the same man for 36 years. We have 2 adult children, both married. I was a past president for the Long Island Board of Realtors. I've serviced them since 1999. As a past president, I conducted many board meetings, and we always did it in a professional manner. And I hope to bring that to our board as well. Locally, I've worked with the Shore and Wading River Chamber of Commerce and worked as right now I'm the secretary. I've worked there since 1993, doing volunteer work, fundraising, and worked on several different committees. I moved to this area because I love the way it is. I like the farms, the waterways, the open spaces. This is why I moved to this area, and I think that's why all of you have moved to this area, as well as the tourists that come to this area. They come here because it's country. It's still the end of the Long Island where the country is, and I'd like to preserve that. There are still many problems, though, that we face. We have a large deficit that we must work on. There are still problems with the downtown area. The downtown has been doing a lot better, I have to say that. We definitely have improved, but we still need to revitalize the downtown area. We do have lots of problems with Route 58. Time. Sorry about that. Thank you again.
No. Get carried away. I know. Bill Bianchi.
Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I'm a Democratic candidate for the town board, and I look forward to meeting with all of you very shortly. The background that I bring to the board: I was born in East Patchogue. I went to Union College up upstate New York, and went in the family greenhouse business in 1952. So I've been a member of the Farm Bureau for 40 years. I've been very involved in business. I've always been in private business. The only government job I ever had was when I was elected to the New York State Assembly. I was elected there for a period of 22 years. And during that time, I served as chairman of the Agriculture Committee, the Local Government Committee. I served on the Ways and Means Committee, and I had an opportunity for 22 years to learn how state government works. I still have many friends who are still there. Steve Engelbright was around the other day. He's still a member. George Hutbruckner, of course, went on to Congress. He's a neighbor not too far away from us. I think the kind of background I've had gives me a unique opportunity as the only person on the board who has served in the assembly in the state level of government. It was not an appointed position. I had an election every 2 years in a Republican district as a Democrat, so I know what it is to campaign and have a hard time. But it usually worked, and I look forward to working with you together shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Stop. All right, the questions, first question, do you believe that the town has a firm financial footing and is on the right trajectory?
Okay, I believe that the town is on its way to a firm financial footing. I believe that the town is much better off today than it was 4 years ago when I took office. When we took office 4 years ago, we were looking at a 16% tax increase. That was for the first year. That was to pay the $4 million in landfill debt that was being funded by one-shot deals at EPCAL. Anytime we got a contract at EPCAL and there was a down payment, that money was used to pay the deficit for the landfill debt. The town has cut back on spending significantly. We have not spent any more money than what was in the budget, with the exception of contracts for the union employees and for the police. So we have cut back on spending significantly. We have done everything that we can to look at ways to do things differently, to bring in revenue to the town and to save the taxpayers money. And I had gone over a few of those things in my opening statement with the garbage tax and looking at the phone bills, saving $75,000 going forward. And also moving forward, we are looking to cut down on overcrowded houses and rental housing, where people are renting out their houses and destroying the quality of life for their neighbors and not paying their fees and not paying the commercial taxes and taking business away from our commercial districts. So we are doing everything that we can to hold the line and cut back on spending, and I think that we've done a good job. I think that once EPCAL is subdivided and we start selling off these smaller lots, that will be the tax relief for the taxpayers. We can't save any more on pens and pencils. I've gone through the budget along with Councilman Gabrielson and the supervisor. The budget that's being proposed has additional cuts, and we can't save taxpayers money by cutting back on pens and pencils. We have to find new ways of doing things, and I think that we've done that.
Now, Millie Thomas.
As far as I know, Riverhead is broke. We have a big deficit. It's about $66 million. And we've borrowed $57 million from our community preservation fund. Now, I know when you bought a house, if you bought in the last 20 years or so, you had to pay a 2% tax for community preservation. And we love preservation. We want to keep it that way. But we've had to borrow against that fund. So that leaves a lot less money for preservation for the future. And also the large corporations, these big box stores, I don't know what we're getting out of them as far as revenue goes. All I can say is that I see that they take from our community, but what did they give us back? I see more traffic. We had a Walmart down the road, about 2 miles from where the new Walmart is going. We have a BJ's down the road. Why did we need a Costco? I don't know. But what are we getting back? I see that we have more traffic. I see the problems that it's creating. More traffic, more police presence that we're going to need, and I think we need appropriate assessments from these large stores. And also, EPCAL, we may have to borrow from EPCAL we may have to mortgage EPCAL if that's allowed to or raise taxes if we don't do something about the deficit.
Bill Bianchi.
I think the problem here in this town is that the members of the town board have not paid attention to what's going on in front of them. As I drive down 58, and I have for years there, it looks like a war zone. I tell my friends it looks like Saudi Arabia, just a sea of sand. People did not come out here to look at like Saudi Arabia. And we have some citizens here tonight from the area next to Costco who were with me on the highway 2 days ago. These are senior citizens who have lived here a long time, and they're representative of many of the people who live in Foxwoods. And what they found is that their life was partially destroyed by the town of Riverhead, because they just took all the trees and the bulldozers and pushed them all down so that these people are now sitting almost in a parking lot. How anybody on the town, including the supervisor, can allow that to happen over a period of time boggles the mind. Do you think the town of East Hampton would allow that to happen? You think the town of Southampton would allow that to happen? So why do you want to dump on Riverhead?
All right, this question is a little bit longer, so please pay attention. We'll start with the Democrats this time. It says, do you think the Riverhead hamlets, including Wading River and Calverton and Jamesport, run the risk of being overwhelmed by the sort of commercial sprawl that typifies towns to our west? Or do you think that the amount and type of commercial development allowed by existing zoning in the hamlets is appropriate? If you think there is a problem, how would you suggest addressing it? I'll start with Mr. Bianchi.
Well, as I was saying before, the way you address it is to pay attention to what's going on. And then you decide that the Route 58 between the LIE and 105 is as far as it's going to go. You don't let it go any further either way, because it's certainly big enough, and there are small properties that could be infilled. The other thing about all that is the area is big enough with enough shopping that it doesn't have to be any bigger. I had somebody tell me the other day that the square footage on 58 in Riverhead is bigger than any shopping center on Long Island. So how big do you want to go, number one? And here we are, we're the East End shopping center for the towns of Southold, East Hampton, and Southampton. And yet, I don't know what the town board did, but the money's not coming in. Millions and millions of dollars are going into these projects. And the town is broke. The budget next year will be a minus $1.7 million. And they are destroying the environment. They're changing our way of life. And for that we must suffer. But we get nothing out of it. The traffic is terrible. We'll talk about traffic maybe in the next question. But I have some ideas of what we might do on traffic, but what I don't understand is nobody on the town board seems to care. You ask these people over here, you could ask them after the meeting what they think. And these poor people had to go out on 58 and picket 2 days ago to try to save something from the environment that they live in, because the people in power don't give a damn about them.
Billy Thomas?
I was told that there was nothing that could be done when they cleared all the trees for Costco development, because that was to code. Well, if that's code, then something has to be changed. As a realtor, I have been involved in several developments for builders, and they have to leave a buffer between different developments, and that's just for residential homes. So I don't understand why there's no rules and regulations for leaving buffers in between big box stores and residential communities. So I think that's what needs to be changed. Also, with there's a property, I guess it's a medical center that's being built over by Northville Turnpike, and it's like 10 feet off the road. And that doesn't seem right either. So if that's what code is, it needs to be changed. I don't know how you change the code. I haven't been involved in changing codes, but I will be. I absolutely will be, because I think it's a shame. Also, Route 58 has been taken away from the downtown area. The downtown area, like I said, is improving, but I think that we could do a lot more with diverting some people, tourists, to go to our downtown area rather than just the box stores. Thank you.
Jody Giglio?
Right. It's interesting that my opponent, Mr. Bianchi, calls out that he doesn't want to see any more commercial sprawl. And I'm proud to say that I voted no to settle Calverton Manor, which was west of the Long Island Expressway, because I wanted to uphold the master plan. Now, the master plan was a series of public hearings that occurred for 5 years up until 2003, when the town board adopted the zoning, and then they adopted the code that went along with the zoning in 2004. That's long before we were on the town board, long before I was on the town board. So the master plan calls out commercial hamlets, and it called for Route 58 to be the commercial corridor within town. And folks, I don't have the number as to what Route 58 pays in taxes, but without Route 58, we'd be paying a lot more. When it comes to preservation, and it comes to the land and open space, and it comes to farms, almost 50% of our land is off the tax rolls, okay? That means we don't collect the taxes that we should be on those 50% because we chose to have that as open space. That's why we don't get the money from the state for the school district for the subsidy, because we chose to take land off the tax rolls rather than having it be developed as they have up west. That's already done. As far as residential lots, most of those lots have been upzoned to 2 acres. As far as commercial sprawl, it's not happening. When it was brought to our attention that there were concerns about the Wading River hamlet, we acted on it immediately. And we did a hamlet study. We selected the firm that the environmentalists selected that we use to do the hamlet study in Wading River. And we paid them, and we adopted zoning code in accordance with the recommendations and the public hearings and everything that came out of that hamlet study. So we're not ignoring zoning. We're not ignoring what the people want. We're doing what the people want.
Next question. There's been a checkered history of unusual proposals for EPCAL, as well as a history of controversial site plan approvals in Riverhead. In light of that, do you support the idea of an expedited 90-day approval for site plans at EPCAL?
I think everybody's confused on this 90-day expedited approval at EPCAL. Because what the town board has undergone now, which I'm proud of, is we're going through all the rough hurdles of what it takes for a developer to come to town and say, I want to build a building. I want to build a 250,000 square foot manufacturing facility. FAA, I want to build a $225 million facility and create 800 high-paying jobs of $100,000 a year or more. We're doing the grunt work now, folks, so that when those people come in, as long as what they want to do falls within the description of what we're going through now, they'll be able to get those approvals within 90 days because we are getting the approvals for them today so that they can come here. And that's what's going to separate us from any other commercial development or industrial development in Long Island, is that you're not going to have to go to the New York State DEC. You're not going to have to go to the Health Department. You're not going to have to go to the Pine Barrens Commission. You're going to come right to a panel of people that have already reviewed all of that you would have had to start from scratch with, because we would have already done that for you. And that's what's going to hold EPCAL aside from any other industrial development, and that's what's going to get us the tax base that we need. It may not come for a while, but it's going to come. And you know what? It's the first time that anything has been done with EPCAL since we've taken the property over. It's the first realistic solution to development and replacing the jobs when Grumman left. So I'm proud of that record, and I do believe in the 90-day fast-tracking process, and I do think that it'll work, and I do think that it'll encourage people to come here rather than go elsewhere.
Millie?
I think that's great if we can do it, but I do know some people that are trying to separate land, and it's been taking 2 years. So whatever you can do behind the scenes is good, so that we can keep on track in 90 days. That would be terrific. But we definitely need some high-paying jobs. And how do we get these high-paying jobs? We need to entice technology companies, research and development companies, pharmaceutical companies. Our children are leaving the area because a lot of them are, they went to college and they're looking for high-paying jobs, and we don't have them. And of course, Walmart and Costco, they're just going to bring lower-paying jobs, minimum wage probably. But the infrastructure has been a problem in EPCAL, and that's why a lot of the companies don't want to take it over, because we need to work on that infrastructure, because they have to hook up with the water and waters and sewer and roads, and there's a lot of problems there. So we have to work on that. But I think that we need to also get involved with green features like solar power and wind power, and maybe do something with electric power. There is there's a turbine plant there that the oil company owns, and maybe we can talk to some power companies and get something going with that. That would be great to have less fees on our LIPA bill. That would be a really good thing. FAA would be fabulous. If we could get the FAA to come here and have high-paying jobs, that would be great. The only problem is that the FAA is looking within 150 miles from New York City, so it could happen upstate. We'd love them to come here, but the likelihood is, we're not sure, the likelihood of that.
Bill, Bianchi?
I think that the first thing we might talk about is how do you handle the property once the governor signs the bill, allowing the procedure to go forward, as Jody pointed out. My friend George Hochberger, who was paid by the board to go to Albany to get the bill passed, has told me, being an engineer, that we have to be very worried about one problem. And that is, if the lots are cut up in the pieces that they're talking about, maybe 4 to 5 acres each, and there's no sewers, there's no power, good source of power, there's no roads, the cost of infrastructure could be as much as $40 million. And then what's the town going to do? Find out $40 million, and when people don't come, we're all going to pay for that? It's a very complicated and very expensive problem that is not easy to figure out. The other point I'd make is when you go to West Hampton and you drive down the road to the West Hampton Airport, that has been developed for business and industry for a period of 10 or 20 years. Everything's ready to go, and I don't see anybody going there. I just don't see anybody moving. So why, if they can't go there where they've got some infrastructure, why would they come out here and go in the woods? So I think we need some better thinking. We have to be very careful because, as George said, if you just are desperate for money and you sell off the lots to the speculators, you still have nothing. And then later, when you have something better, you've sold it all for a pittance, as they did with the original buildings at Grunt. Don't forget that.
All right, next question. We all know that the Riverhead Community Preservation Funds are nearly exhausted. In your opinion, is open space preservation a luxury that Riverhead can no longer afford? Start with Ms. Bianchi.
No, it's not a luxury at all. The people who study that question have always found out that the best thing you can have in your district is nothing. The best thing you can have is zero. If you have, as Jody pointed out, 50% of the property that's off the tax rolls because it's preserved woodland, open space, that's great. They don't need ambulances, they don't need fire departments, they don't need schools, they don't need all the things that the people in houses need. So you're much better off with that kind of a situation. As you know, it's pretty easy. We've all lived on Long Island a long time. As you get into Nassau County, the further you go to the west, like in Levittown, places like that are very nice, the houses get smaller, the lots get smaller. And do you think their taxes are smaller? Of course not. They're higher than we are here. because development by itself usually means that the taxes go up. The only reason they're low in the Hamptons is that you have a lot of houses with nobody in them in the wintertime. So they don't need schools, they don't need those facilities. So that's something that is very important to understand. And open space for the long run is the best thing we can have in Riverhead.
Billy?
Well, we are the largest farming community on Long Island, and actually New York State, so we like to keep it that way. The problem lies sometimes, recently we did a small piece of land, we preserved it. It was owned by a woman, and we have the same issues with the farmers. You know, everybody thinks that their property's worth a lot of money. So we more than it usually is, more than market value. So we have to work with the people that actually own farms also, and try to make some kind of talk to them about if they do the word I'm trying to get is the development rights. If we to preserve the land, we need to purchase development rights, but we have to come to an agreement with them as to what the cost is. The piece of property that we just were able to preserve, we had to deal with the state, and it took a long time, and of course we had to negotiate with the owner, but it did happen. So I'm happy to say that it was only a small piece of land, but it was successful. So we have to deal with the farm community as well, so that we can preserve some land.
Jeremy Giglio?
Okay. So I've heard a lot tonight about how much we've spent in preserving land throughout town and what the effect of that preservation has been on the town and on the taxpayers. Is it a luxury we can't afford? Absolutely not. It's not a luxury we can't afford. We can afford it. We just have to find innovative ways to do it, which is why during the BOA study, I'm proposing that the properties on the south side of 25 on West Main Street as you're coming into downtown Riverhead, that those properties that you can't touch because they're part of the Wild Scenic Recreational Rivers Act. You can't improve them, you can't connect them to sewers. There's really not a lot that you can do with those properties, and those properties and the buildings on them are falling to pieces. So my proposal is to allow for increased development on the north side of 25 that's currently zoned commercial, that doesn't abut any residential properties, and give them increased density there per square footage for each square foot that they buy and take down on the south side. And then on the south side, have a nice walking rural corridor where you can ride a bike, you can take a walk right along the Peconic River all the way into downtown Riverhead. And all of those blighted buildings will be taken down. And new buildings will be built on the north side of Route 25. And nothing too high and nothing too drastic, but more than what we have there now. And we'll be able to take care of the blight on the south side and create a nice walking trail for our residents and for visitors that come to town. So you have to just come up with innovative ways, folks. We don't have any more money. We have a $6 million a year debt on the CPF fund, and we're only taking in $2.2 million. So we have to find out ways in order to make our properties, we have to transfer properties. We have to have properties sold in order to increase the money into the Community Preservation Fund before we can think about spending another penny out of the Community Preservation Fund. Because in 6 years, we're not going to have the money to pay out of the Community Preservation Fund. So we have to start creating property that can be developed in commercial districts that will supply the money to buy up future land.
Now, this is going to be our last question before we go into closing statements. I wish we had more time. Many have said that agro-tourism is critical to keeping many farming viable here in Riverhead, but an increasing number of events and activities in vineyards and farms seem to be impacting the quality of life here. What would you do, if anything, to address the negative impacts of all of these increasing activities? Jody?
Yes, the vineyards and the farm communities are supposed to abide by a certain rules for the New York State Department of Ag and Markets. where it says that whatever they grow on their property, they can sell on the property, and then they can sell 40% of retail goods to accompany that. So we've done a good job at keeping track of that, and it's gotten a little bit out of hand, and we've taken a few vineyards and what have you to court for the events that they've had that have been above and beyond what they're permitted to do based on their reduced taxes that they pay because they are an agricultural use. So I think it's important that we make that the agricultural districts and the agricultural uses stick to the agricultural uses, because once they start getting into these larger venues, they're taking away from the commercial districts that are paying the big taxes. So it's not fair to the commercial districts, and our commercial districts are going to start collapsing if we don't hold the vineyards more accountable for the events that they're having. When they have weddings, they're supposed to be having the food catered in from a restaurant. They're not supposed to be preparing the food at the vineyard, and they are. So we've been addressing it, we've been violating them, we've been bringing them into court. Whenever we're aware of someone's doing something outside of the code that they're not supposed to be, we address it. And we're trying to bring everybody into compliance. This town board has a very good working relationship with the Farm Bureau. We bring them in, we consult with them often. We have a farmer on the board, Councilman Gabrielson, that tells us this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do, and we all sit together, we talk about it with the Farm Bureau and the vineyards and the people that are affected by it and come up with solutions. It's about solutions, people. Everybody can sit there all day long and point the finger. You got to have an answer, and you got to be able to sit down and talk about it. So we have, like I said, a very spirited town board that has good opinions, and we all get together, we debate it, we talk about it, and we come up with a solution. Thank you.
That's a tough one, because we can't say, well, let's take all the roads and make them wider. It doesn't happen that easily or overnight. So we're kind of stuck right now, especially this time of the year, with all these people coming out, pumpkin picking, apple picking, going to the vineyards and doing all of that. And I hope that they're keeping them to task as to what they're supposed to do. And Jody said they have to go in and talk to them about not catering on site, and that's a difficult thing. You have to, of course, enforce it, because otherwise it definitely gets out of hand. And now traffic is out of hand, and it's a very tough thing to say that it could be a quick fix. It's definitely not a quick fix. I would like to have some part of EPCAL for like fairgrounds, and I think we can have some events at a fairground. Of course, we need to get revenue, so that's not going to bring a heck of a lot of revenue in. So just a small portion for fairgrounds and recreation. I think that would kind of divert the traffic a little bit towards that area. Thank you.
Bill Bianchi.
Yes, I think I came up with a good answer to the problem. Last weekend, our business is there on Northville Turnpike, and we had to take 2 trucks down to Matatuck. And the problem was on Northville Turnpike at 1 in the afternoon on Friday. The traffic at the intersection of Northville and Sound Avenue was backed up almost a mile to the west on Sound Avenue and half a mile on Northville Turnpike. And it was very dangerous. Cars are going all over the place trying to get through there. Some were coming east, some were coming west. And then as I went down past Horace, half an hour later, there was a problem. 4 cars ahead of me wanted to make a left into Horace. And to do that, they had to cut across the traffic, the other lane. The other lane wouldn't stop. So because they couldn't move, we all backed up for another quarter mile. It seems to me a very simple thing to do. We need to get not some policemen, but some traffic people there that can stop and start the traffic right out in the road. And you can do that next weekend. Just having the traffic moving better would be a tremendous improvement for the farms, for the vineyards, and for the drivers. There's another problem too. In many cases, when the traffic is a little bit wild, people park sometimes on one side of the road or the other, and they have little kids. and they decide to go to the other side, and the kids are running between the cars on the road. I mean, somebody's going to get killed if they're not careful. So it seems to me, we don't need traffic lights, but there should be some organization out there that supervises how the traffic is going. It would speed it up and make it much safer for everyone.
All right, now we will do the closing statements, and we'll start with Mr. Bianchi, and since he's up.
Okay. Well, I look forward to the opportunity to meet all of you, as I said before, in this campaign. We're going to talk about all the challenges that are before the Riverhead Town Board and all of us as residents, and I hope that we can articulate those concerns and bring some new life on the board. You know, there's a problem in many boards where they're all one party. And right now, this board is all Republican. My mother and father are Republicans. They were. So I have nothing against them. If the board was all Democratic, you'd have the same problem. It's always good to have some new blood and some new ideas and a little bit from both parties. So I think if that can happen, especially in this election, that we can bring a lot of help, a lot of new ideas, and my 22 years in Albany, I promise you I will put to good use to help us all get through the challenges of Route 58 and taxes. Thank you.
Really? Ellen Thomas?
In the year 2000, there was a study done. It was a grassroots study done by residents in the community. And that it was called Vision 2020. So they were trying to make a projection about the year 2020. So we're almost there. Don't want to push it though. But anyway, they showed that the worst things about the town at that time, in the year 2000, they were traffic, taxes, overdevelopment, the rundown appearance of the downtown area, and government. Those sentiments still exist in many cases. The best things that they said were the rural atmosphere of the area, the open space and the natural environment, and those things still exist. The future of Riverhead is in your hands, the hands of the taxpayers, and if you're happy with the way things are now, you'll continue to vote the current board, but it's up to you. Thank you.
Jody? Giglio?
Okay, I hear this often about a one-party board and fighting, and I don't consider it fighting. I see what's going on the federal level right now, and I think you can all relate to that, where we have Republicans and Democrats that can't get to the table to sit down and talk about the problems facing our nation. At least this town board can sit down, we talk about it. We have spirited debates about it, but we come up with the best solutions for you, the taxpayers, and that's what we all strive for, and we're smart people, and we're doing the right thing by the taxpayers of this town. And when there's a problem, we address it. The town is better today than it was 4 years ago. It absolutely is. There's life downtown, spending is down, and tax relief is in sight. I have helped to move this town forward, yet there is much more that needs to be done. If re-elected, I promise to continue my work to protect your tax dollars while improving services, quality of life, and improving the town's code. I am honored to have served you, the taxpayers, for the last 4 years. I love my job. I love when people come into my office and they face me with a challenge that they have in their day-to-day life or in their quality of life issues. And I can take their hand and walk them down the hall and try and get them the answer or get that problem fixed. That's what I'm good at. I'm a problem solver, and I don't take no for an answer. So I expect accountability for the people that work in town hall. They work for the taxpayers. I work for you, and I'm here for you. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the Calverton Wading River Civic Association for having me here tonight. And I hope that you will all come out and support me on November 5th. If you have any questions about my campaign or if you want to reach me, you can go to my website, www.jody2013.com, and I will get back to you, as I do get back to everybody that calls my office or needs a help with something. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the candidates for town council. I mean, our discussion with the candidates for supervisor, and we've been following the same format as we did for candidates for town council. Some of the questions that are asked may sound familiar because we couldn't neatly separate questions sometimes and say, well, this is only something that the council should be concerned, and obviously it's not a concern of the supervisor. So some of the questions will say, hey, did they answer that question from town council? Yes, they did, but we want to hear from the candidates for supervisor. And we will start out with Angela DeVita, the Democratic candidate, and what other line? Working families. Angela, 2 minutes.
Thank you, and for the opportunity to speak and meet with you this evening. Riverhead Town has always straddled two economic spheres, agriculture and commerce. The challenges we face in the future is how do we balance these two now? How do we continue as the largest agricultural town in Suffolk County while building a commercial base that will reduce our high residential property taxes? Our debt is staggering. It's about $122 million total. Our current town government claims that things are trending in the right direction. No new monies have been borrowed, and fund balances are being used to pay off debt and balance the annual budget. While it's a great soundbite in an election year, absent a new revenue stream, this approach will result in a catastrophic tax increase over the next several years. Commercial development along our main corridor, from Wading River to Jamesport, has been a source of new revenue, there's no doubt about that, and tax collections. But consider the cost to our town's rural character. We have become the main retail sales tax source for the whole East End. But too little of these revenues flow back to us. We deserve and must demand our fair share of these revenues. This will be a priority of my administration. I will be relentless in the pursuit of these funds, which, if given proportionately to the some 34,000 residents in our town, can significantly reduce your residential property taxes. We need to improve our farmland and open space purchase schedules, and we also need to become the masters of our future at EPCAL. We cannot merely open the gates and say, come on in, we're open for business, and let everyone come in and determine what our future is there. Thank you.
Sean Walter.
This is going to be a little unconventional. Can I have everybody stand, please? Please. You won't stand, you will not be. One of the most difficult things about being town supervisor, and when I get these calls, every car accident results in a death, every employee that's injured, I get those calls. It doesn't matter what time of the day. And I want to take 30 seconds of the opening. We lost Detective Robert Bowden suddenly this week. Detective Bowden was a 32-year veteran of the Riverhead Police Force. And I'd like to just take 30 seconds and have a moment of silence for him. All right, thank you. You know, being town supervisor is a very difficult job. Okay, thank you. I'm going to give you the phone too. Being town supervisor is a very difficult job, and it doesn't fall neatly into very nice sound bites. And yes, the town is trending in the right direction with its budget. But in order to understand where we are today, we have to look at the past. When we took office 4 years ago, we had the Democrats were spending, they were in control, they were spending at 3 times the rate of inflation. They ran the budget like a giant credit card, they paid the minimum balances. We borrowed so much money under the CPF that I don't even have, it's staggering what we owe, but they did it for the right reason, I will give them that. Financial audits were 2, 10, and 20 years behind schedule. I'm happy to report today on the financial front, financial audits are all done and up to date. Comptrollers came in and audited the town and gave us a clean bill of health. And yes, we're still laboring under $4 million a year of landfill debt. Things are moving in the right direction. It is a race between getting EPCAL subdivided and satisfying, to build tax base to satisfy the hunger that is the landfill debt. And I'm very happy to have Ms. DeVito agree with me that we should not give up EPCAL to the developers and let them do willy-nilly what they want. That's why we have the 90-day permit approval in place. EPCAL has, yes, a plan endorsed by the environmental groups, the DEC, and everybody that's looked at it. And quite frankly, if you don't see the changes on Main Street that's lit up like it hasn't been since the 70s, I don't know where you've been. Things are far better today than they were 4 years ago in this town. Do we have problems? We have problems, but they will be solved.
All right. Okay. First question. Do you believe that the town has a firm financial footing and is on the right trajectory? And we'll start with Mr. Walker.
We're on the right trajectory because, as I said in the opening statement, we hadn't even done our financial audits. We hadn't even sold our debt. We were paying for things like keyless entry systems and vehicles and roads by bonding them. We no longer do that. The highway superintendent has a budget, a paving budget. He's never had a paving budget before. The ambulance district puts money in reserves to buy its ambulances so we don't have to bond for it. We are on the right track. The problem is that this tax increase, and it exists, and I've been talking about it since 2010 when I got elected. This tax increase is a direct result of the landfill debt. We saved almost $5 million over the past, $4 or $5 million over the past couple of years just with the cuts we've made to the budget to get us to the point where we can get the property subdivided, get it back on the market, and that's going to happen. All revenue streams seem to be trending in the right direction. The property will get subdivided. We will be able to increase our tax base. And for those of you that think that the money doesn't come in from Route 58, it does. Route 58 has the largest taxpayers in the town. Tanger is one of the largest. Tosco is one of the largest. The Home Depot Shopping Center is one of the largest. They pay millions of dollars a year in taxes. And I know we didn't get it all right with some of the shopping centers. I acknowledge that. But that's going to add, my estimate, between $500,000 to $750,000 to next year's budget. That's moving in the right direction. We have more to do. We're not done, but we'll get there.
Angela DeVito?
I don't disagree with the town supervisor. We are moving in a direction towards better fiscal accountability as well as solvency for the town. However, looking to, and if you read, and you should read, the audits that were just provided by our external auditors for the town, we are facing in 2014 the drop off the cliff if we don't have a huge infusion of monies into this town. Also, if you consider and you read from our consultants, we paid as taxpayers $480,000 to a consultant to give us a plan for EPCAL. It's not a completed plan, but one of the things that they say in their study is that we're looking at a 10-year out development. We don't have 10 years in terms of your real property taxes. You don't have those 10 years to do this. And I wasn't referring to commercial property taxes on Route 58 and the corridor from Wading River to Jamesport. I was referring to retail sales tax. We collect for Suffolk County hundreds of millions of dollars with that commercial development, and we do not get back significantly a share that is proportionately what we need. And that is something that is a new revenue stream that we should pursue. The sale of lands, selling off EPCAL at this point. The 90-day plan he talks about, that we've read about and is in the law, doesn't say what's going to come there, when they have to start, when they have to put their shovels in the ground, and what they're going to be. It just says that they'll get their permits and they can be there in 90 days. And actually, it's not 90 days. If you read the law, it's 160 minimally, and with an extension, it's 220 days.
All right, our next question again is a EPCAL question. Seems to be a lot of us. If land in EPCAL is still not ready for sale next year, or at least not immediately selling, would you be in favor of borrowing money at low rates using EPCAL property as collateral to hold taxes down, tax increases down?
No, I would not. I believe that that would just create debt, further debt down the road that we really can't anticipate the size and the problems with. What I would pursue, and I stated that in my opening statement, is that portion of sales tax revenue to come into this town. Selling off the land at EPCAL, it's not going to be ready in 2014 for that budget in which we have been told there's going to be double-digit tax increases. It's not going to be ready in 2015. It's just not going to happen. It's going to take time. By the way, the bill that would give us the ability to create the authority and start the work at EPCAL hasn't been signed by the governor of the state of New York yet. So it's not legislation that we can pick up and run with and go with.
If you want to talk pie in the sky, talk sales tax revenue. And Angela, you're absolutely wrong on your numbers. The sales tax revenue that comes out of the town of Riverhead is about $30 million, we think. New York State doesn't track sales tax. You would need special state legislation to figure out how much sales tax you're going to get. And Angela, if you honestly think Steve Ballone's going to give you $30 million up, think again. That is the most pie in the sky. If you're worried about me trying to get EPCAL sold after 3 years, try to get the county executive to give you $30 million in sales tax revenue. It ain't going to happen. So what is realistic? Two things are realistic. Further cuts, that could happen in town. But the reality is, there are two ways that I think we can approach this. If we cannot sell the property, which I truly believe we'll be able to sell lots off, I don't want to sell the entire subdivision out because that doesn't make sense. That puts somebody else in charge of Riverhead's future. But there's two things we can do. One, we don't need a large amount of money. We just need to balance the deficit for the moment until the sales take place. So I'm pretty certain if you go to Suffolk County National Bank where, gee, we keep $100 million, you're going to get better than a low-interest loan from them. It can happen. The second thing is equity partnerships. If you look at what Governor Cuomo has done with the Tappan Zee Bridge, he's got an equity investment firm involved in financing and building that bridge. That's what we need. The one thing that troubles me about EPCAL, and George Hochbruckner, you want to talk about a bipartisan board? Yes, we hired George Hochbruckner, a Democrat, to help us because we knew we needed the help in the assembly. When you talk to George and you ask him, and you ask Senator LaValle and others, they kind of will tell you that it was not a good thing to give the town that property because we don't have the financial resources ourselves. We have to rely on the state, and we will.
All right, next question. This will go first to Sean Walker. The press and the public have been quite critical of this town board's bickering, which has on numerous occasions escalated to the point of harsh and threatening statements. Do you believe that this has gotten in the way of business governing? And if so, why should we believe that things will change for the better if you are elected or re-elected?
You know, people will make that criticism all day long, and I have to say, Councilman Joe DiGiglio has it 100% right. See, we're not like what's the president and the speaker are doing. We sit down at the table and we talk, and boy, oh boy, Councilman Giglio said once that we act like an Italian family. I don't know, I'm an Irish-German family. But boy, oh boy, do we have some conversations. But the proof is in the pudding, folks. Look at Main Street. Look at the economic development. Look at the 500-600 construction jobs that we have in this town. Look at the fact that the audits are done. The controllers came in and gave us a clean bill of health. You can't tell me we're not moving in the right direction. We're not an all Republican board. In fact, I would guess that there's a couple of people on the board that would make my litmus test for a Republican. But we get the job done. It doesn't matter whether we fight. I don't always get along with everybody. I don't always get along with my wife. My wife doesn't always get along with me. I can be a little difficult sometimes. But that's what a marriage is. That's what a board is. If we all got along, I'm quite sure not all of this stuff would come together. Because as Councilwoman Giglio, she went after the FAA facility. Well, I said, I don't know that that's a good idea. But she did it and forced it. And now it could be a reality that there's an 250,000 square foot, actually I think I have the number wrong, $250 million facility with 800 jobs. So don't worry about us fighting. That makes for good TV. Look at the proof. Look at your roads. Look at your downtown. You can see it. You can feel it. You know it's happening.
Angela,
From the perspective of the public, the Italian family aspect or description of how the town board has behaved in public and during work sessions, I think is a little bit stretching that a bit. The question of how this board has behaved and what they've gotten done. Sean has said they've created jobs. Yes, there are construction jobs on Route 58 today. They are people from out of state. They are not people who live in Riverhead, need to earn their living here in Riverhead. So those jobs are not jobs that are for us. He created jobs for people who are coming from Connecticut, Georgia, out of state jobs. The progress with downtown. Yes, there are new businesses, but we have businesses who go. And recently, Mr. Walter was heard to say when the store, the Red Collection, was closing, that's business. Businesses come in, businesses leave. Downtown is not rebuilt. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that prostitutes operating in the middle of the afternoon is a sign of progress. The behavior of this town board, I believe, has kept people out of town hall. As I walked during the primary and spoke with people and asked them why they didn't participate, because local government is the greatest chance you have to make your voice heard, to participate and bring your ideas to those people that you have elected to represent you. And they stay away because they are made to feel unwelcome and they don't like the environment. And that's not one or two people. I knocked on hundreds of doors during that primary. So it's not just a perception that I have. We need to be able to open up our town hall and bring people back into it so they can participate. Ms. Giglio talked earlier today about people coming to her office with their problems, and she's about finding solutions.
time. Yep. Right, this question would go to Mr. Walter. And how do you feel about the tax breaks given by the IDA to developers over the last few years? Have they been too high, too low, or just about right? And do you think that they have been given to the right projects?
You cannot build this town up by tearing this town down, Mr. Vito. You cannot do that. And I'm sorry, there's problems on Main Street and there are problems everywhere on Long Island. But do not stand here and say you're for Main Street and tear it down. That doesn't work. That does not work for the business community. It does not work for the town.
I think
Now, as far as
we're all better if we answer the
As far as, I'll answer the question. As far as the tax breaks are concerned, I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. Tax breaks for Main Street, I'm okay with that. Tax breaks for EPCAL and Route 58, I'm okay with that. All of the commercial development that you see, with the exception on Route 58, with the exception of 21st Century Oncology, they do not receive any tax breaks. Nothing. That's all fully taxed. The only other facility and the medical office complex beyond that on Route 25, fully taxed. The only other facility that received a tax break from the IDA is the Hampton Jitney. That was actually done before I was town supervisor. So the IDA serves a purpose. You will never attract businesses to EPCAL without an industrial development agency. Large corporations aren't coming here when they can go other places and not pay any taxes. So the bottom line is there is an absolute place for the IDA. I've spoken, there's IDA members here, I've spoken to them many times. I believe in Route 58 is off limits, no tax breaks on 58, Main Street and EPCAL.
Angela DeVito.
Thank you. As all of you know, I have been a member and did serve on the Riverhead Industrial Development Agency, the IDA. And its purpose, which is to induce businesses to come here that may not have the financial wherewithal to establish themselves and to operate during their first crucial years when they come here. That is the purpose of what an IDA is supposed to do. When I came to the board on the IDA and reviewed some of what my predecessors did, this town abused from its inception the IDA almost to the present time. I agree that downtown they should be given inducements. The IDA should assist them with tax relief as well as relief for their mortgage tax and their construction tax. However, our IDA needs to establish a set of rules, some governing standards by how they evaluate who is eligible and for what. It shouldn't always just be 10 years, 100%. A company comes in, you can give them, and they have the right within their charter to say, and ask them, how long do you need some assistance before you think you're going to have your feet on the ground and your regular operating costs will not be adversely affected by all of the taxes that you have to pay. You can give relief that's in the form of 3 years, 5 years, starts at 70%, starts at 80%, not always at 100%. It can start at 25%. Our IDA needs to put in place those rules and regulations for themselves. And I will point out that the town board can suggest that to them, but we cannot make them do that.
All right, we'll start with Angela DeVito. Next question. Many have complained that the Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning Board have made numerous wrong-headed decisions over the last few years. Assuming you agree with this characterization, and if you don't, please tell us, is there anything the town board can do to prevent these decisions from happening, or at least to address them once they have?
Boy, that's a little loaded question for me. Yes, I do think our Zoning Board of Appeals has made bad decisions in at least the last decade that I've been following them, and the Planning Board also. What I think that the town board could do is to communicate with those two agencies. Once again, we are organized and structured in our local government in such a way that it makes it difficult for your town board. You cannot dictate to your planning board and say you must do this. You cannot dictate to the Zoning Board of Appeals, you must do this. But I think by meeting with them in an ad hoc situation to discuss on a regular basis where the town is going and the things that are going on, the town board does deal with code changes. There's a code committee that meets to figure out where the loopholes are so that, you know, Pete Danowski can't keep driving his trucks through all of them all the time and getting his decisions at the ZBA. There is a code committee, but to talk about that and talk about where we want to be within the framework of our comprehensive plan. There was mention made of the comprehensive plan earlier tonight. It is not a static document. In 2003, when it was adopted, it is not the tablets that Moses brought down off the mountain. It is supposed to be a vibrant, dynamic document that is reviewed by state law every 2 years to see what is working, what isn't working, what can we do. So what we need to do is communicate more with the members of that board, and maybe we really need to look and create for board members to have credentials to be on those boards. We need individuals, not just Joe Citizen can sit on there and make those decisions, because they truly impact what goes on in this town. We need people that can apply for those positions, they are paid town positions, and have qualifications. So that would be a first step that we as a town board can do. Thank you.
Sean Walker.
As Mr. Vito said, the zoning board and the planning board are autonomous boards. We've made some changes to the zoning board of appeals in that the last appointment was somebody from Wading River. That was not a political appointment per se. We tried to open it up. We advertised for it, and there's a young lady that we appointed to the ZBA, and we'll continue to keep it as an open process. There is also training requirements for the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board that when we took office they were not following. They need to do a certain amount of what we would in the legal profession call continuing legal education, but they have to have a certain number of training credits. So we are requiring them to have the training credits, and I've been checking up to make sure they've been doing this. We speak with the I personally speak with the chairman of the Zoning Board and the chairman with the Planning Board. One of the things that I do is I have a staff meeting every Monday morning. I speak with the staff. There's also times where we have these meetings with the chairman, or that I'll have with the chairman of the Zoning Board, the Planning Board, to try to ascertain the direction that they're going and hope that they understand the direction that the board is going. Do they make mistakes? Yes. Did they make a blunder, which I think they're very upset about recently? Yes. And they're going to fix that. But as far as the town exerting a lot of pressure on them, the only thing the town really has the ability to do is reappoint different members. Once you appoint them, the state law, the Zoning Board of Appeals is a quasi-judicial agency, a quasi-judicial branch, and the Planning Board, again, is completely autonomous from the town board. So it is a difficult thing, but I do talk to them on a regular basis, and we do have open lines of communication, and we have crafted and shaped many things, including the correction to the Costco debacle.
Okay. Next question is on the comprehensive land use plan, 2003. And we'll start with Mr. Walter. What, if any, portions of Riverhead's comprehensive land use plan, if any, do you think are in need of revision?
There's the comprehensive master plan. It is not, as Mr. Vito said, it is not a static document. It needs to be updated. When the residents called out for changes to the master plan in Wading River, we looked at it. We had a series of meetings. We hired Frank Fish Associates, the same group that was working on the 25A corridor study, and we came up with a new plan, comp plan for Wading River, and we have adopted that. There are things in the master plan that don't make sense. Our parking schedule, is a small part of the master plan, but there's things in there like the parking schedule that should have been addressed when the master plan was adopted. There's some things in there that don't make sense. You know, we don't have a marina district. The couple of marinas we have in town are not zone marinas. So there are things that have to be changed. Is the town in the need of updating the entire master plan? No, but I think it's probably time to continue to look at updates to it. It's 10 years old this year, and I think the next area, which I'm quite stunned that my opponent has not been calling for, would be an update to the comp plan in Jamesport. And should I be reelected next year? I think that that's one of the things that we should look at, is that Jamesport Aquabog corridor, to look at it the way we did in Wading River and see if there's some updates that need to be made. I think there are. I'm surprised that Mr. Vito has never mentioned that.
Angela DeVito?
Our comprehensive plan is like when you build a building, you frame it out, it provides us the frame, and then all of your zone use districts and your codes for those, what is allowed, is what you fill it with. The ability to go to one part of town and say we'd like to revisit it here, and then go to another part of town and revisit it there, may seem as a reasonable plan, but it needs to be part of a larger plan that says our comprehensive plan, what we put in place, because that plan describes what we want for our entire town, not sections of it. Okay? You can do it and roll it out in sections, but you have to review it as a whole. You have to look at what is working, because the same zone use districts that apply in Wading River apply in Jamesport. They apply in downtown Riverhead. They apply in Northfield. Those zone use districts are universal. And one of the things that perhaps we need to consider, which is outside of, not necessarily the comprehensive plan review, but is to go to form-based zoning, so that we move away from the conventional and archaic restrictions that our zone use districts place on us, that make it difficult to allow the character and uniqueness of Wading River, which is different from South Jamesport where I live, and which is different from Roanoke Avenue, the corridor there. That would allow us to develop plans for what we want there and what is best use of that land and best management for those lands that are there. Thank you.
Riverhead Town only recently required public hearings for site plans. Do you think that the public is now adequately involved in the planning process? Or do you think other measures should be taken to ensure land use planning is in the best long-term public interest? If so, what measures?
I think that the adoption of and pushing forward for public hearings on site plans was a good step in the first step in a great direction. One of the things that we need to do, if any of you go, how many of you here go to town hall 2 hearings, to public hearings? Okay, when they were doing when they were presenting, for example, the audit report. We have in town hall, there's been a lot of complaints that we're not very modern, our IT is really behind the times. We have to bring it into at least the 20th century, forget the 21st century. But they presented this report, and we have this very nice screen that comes down in which everything that they are sitting and discussing and the public is supposed to be part of. And when we have site plans in that, we have little maps that get put up. How many of you have ever sat in an audience and tried to read one of those plans that they put up there? Did you find out what you wanted? No. But they could easily, one of the changes that I would do is everyone who comes into a hearing to present what it is they want, it needs to go up on that big screen so that all of you can follow it. That would truly make having a public hearing on it worthwhile. And all of those things need to be made available to the public prior to the hearing so that you can walk in and review it. Those are some of the smaller changes that need to be made that would give credence to the importance of having a public hearing. Merely saying we're having a public hearing and it gets denounced, and also the way in which the planning board puts up their agenda. You have to have all your comments in about what's being proposed before they actually have their discussion on it. It's a kind of little backwards step there that just doesn't make sense. So those are some of the changes that I would do. Thank you.
Sean Walker?
I'm proud to say that I spearheaded the effort to have public hearings for site plans. It didn't exist. It didn't exist under the prior town supervisors, and I think it was a step in the right direction. The fact of the matter is, at the town board, just about everything we discuss at work session, we offer to you if you need a copy. We print resolutions for the press, we print resolutions ahead of time while we're discussing them in work session for anybody that wants them. There's usually packets up front. When Ms. DeVito was in for the audits, there was a box. They were available. You could have picked up the audits. Some things don't. It is wonderful when you can put something up on the screen and look at it, but some things don't lend itself to that. The audit, I'm going to say, the findings and the numbers were in about an 8 font. If you put that up on the screen, there wasn't anybody that was going to be able to read it. We make it available. We put them online. So we do everything we possibly can to give the public input. And I go out of my way to the members of the public to give them the opportunity for input. And when certain people come in, certain groups, I know we have some Foxwood members. I took them out of order because I knew their time was precious. We had the Ladies Garden Club in. I took them out of order. I try to give as much input as I possibly can. The fact of the matter is, everything in Town Hall is yours. It's not mine. It's not mine to hide from you. So if you need something, I'll get it to you. If there's something we're not giving you during a public hearing, ask me. You'll have it. It's as simple as that.
This would be the last question. Should the town be doing more to protect the quality of our drinking water and water bodies? And if so, can you share some of your ideas with us? And we'll start with Mr. Walker.
Absolutely, and the town of Riverhead is doing a tremendous job with that. There are two major things that are happening right now. County Executive Steve Ballone thought enough of this town to give us an $8 million grant to upgrade the Riverhead sewage treatment plant. Again, not really a partisan thing. You know, we reached out to him and we said, we need this. This is a $22 million upgrade. It's going to be a 500% tax increase. We asked and the county delivered that to us. They voted on it Tuesday. The county, or the state rather, is, we're applying to the state of New York now for an upgrade to the Calverton sewage treatment plant. So the Calverton sewage treatment plant is it's a secondary sewage treatment plant. It does not remove nitrogen. It discharges the effluent into McKay Lake. It goes right into the Peconic Estuary. We applied for a grant, and I have heard very positive feedback that we're going to get the grant to move the discharge from McKay Lake to north of the groundwater divide. We're doing our part. The county needs to do its part. The sewage, the septic systems that surround the Peconic Bay are what are making the bay sick. It's not the Riverhead sewage treatment plant, it's not the Greenport sewage treatment plant, and it's really not the Calverton sewer district. So I fully support efforts to upgrade sewage, for the county to upgrade sewage treatment systems or septic systems to things like the nitric system. That's money well spent. But that is something that the county health department is in charge of. It's not something that we even have jurisdiction over, but I will support that 100% because that is what will clean the Peconic Estuary, removing septic waste from there.
Angela DeVito.
I think this perhaps is the one issue this evening that Sean and I see 100% together on and see eye to eye on this. The septic systems that we have, the individual septic systems, are on both bay sides what contribute to the problems in the bay, as well as those septic systems on the sound side. And I think that in working and reaching out to the county, that needs to be done, but we also need to reach out to the town of Southampton and work cooperatively with them. We need to begin looking at common solutions for this problem that we all face. The county does have the authority through its Department of Health as to whether or not it approves the type of systems that get put in and such, but we need to work with them and urge them to become a little bit more aggressive with the inclusion of systems that are not the traditional waste treatment systems that we are used to having on Long Island.
Now we come to our closing statements. I'm going to give you time to write closing statements. Okay. We will start with Sean Walter.
I want to thank the Calverton Wading River Civic Associations for this opportunity to come out to address the audience. Riverhead was moving in the wrong direction for a long time. And I understand the frustration of people in the audience and some people sitting at home watching this on their computers. It's a lot to expect of me to correct all these problems in 4 years. But I believe from the bottom of my heart that we've made strides greater than any town board has done in the last 2 decades. Nobody can deny Main Street. Nobody can deny that we've created jobs. Nobody can deny that we have a wonderful economic development subdivision at EPCAL. Nobody can deny that the state of New York and the New York State Assembly voted all unanimously but one assemblyman. It was unanimous in the Senate, and only one assemblyman voted against the EPCAL planning legislation. Nobody can deny that. That legislation, as Denise Civiletti put it, is a game changer for EPCAL. You are moving in the right direction. What I'm asking you, we've got some turbulent water ahead. What I'm asking you is don't change the captain now. We need to keep moving. We need to keep EPCAL on track. We need to keep the Main Street moving, and we need to keep our finances in order. I'm very proud of the fact that, financially speaking, that this town spent at a level of 1.74% over 4 years. That's less than the rate of inflation. I thank you for your time, and I hope you'll consider voting for me November 5th.
Angela DeVito.
Thank you. Again, my thanks to Wading River Civic and the Greater Calverton Civic Association for this opportunity this evening, and for all of you for staying throughout the evening to listen to all of us. Yes, things in Riverhead are better. We could have only hoped that they could get better. But talking about and not wanting to have anything negative said about flies in here, downtown is really sort of sticking your head in the sand and not wanting to see it. We have businesses that have come in and they're wonderful. I shop in them. They're great places to go, great restaurants. You know, the aquarium is a great end piece for us at one end, and Dark Horse at the other with Vale Levitt and Suffolk Theater in the center. It's fine. But when you go to Suffolk Theater, notice that there are town police there to make sure you get to your car safely. So we need to address these things. We need to be able to talk about them and not be afraid to talk about them. When we look and see what we want to do with downtown, we need to see what are we doing on 2nd Street? What are we doing across the river with the town of Southampton? Asking them to work with us on that. With regards to EPCAL, it still is. I was called pie in the sky for wanting to try to get out of Steve Ballone's pocketbook some sales tax revenue. EPCAL really is still pie in the sky until that first shovel goes in and there's an industry coming there and it's going, what kind of jobs it's going to provide. It still is all pie in the sky and can all blow up in our faces. Or we could just do what we did 13 years ago, pocket some money from a quick sale and then use that to fix things until either you don't vote Sean Walter back into office or he just decides, as he did this January, he told us he completed everything. He was done with Riverhead. He wants you to go somewhere else. Thank you.